Hi guys, welcome back to a new video on my channel. Thanks for joining me today. So today I actually have a pretty long tutorial for you. This is about sketching the horse's body freehand without any aids or guidelines. This is actually a part of the Patreon tutorial of this month, in which I'm going to draw this horse with pastels, and this part is just about sketching the outline. So this horse is owned by one of my Facebook followers, Laura, and her boyfriend, and she gave us permission to use this photo for this tutorial. So credits to her for the reference photo. It's a beautiful one, and I'm really excited to sketch this horse. I decided to keep this video mostly real time because this is such an important part of learning how to draw realistically, and I hope you'll find it helpful. You're going to listen to the original audio from the video, so the real-time audio, and then at the end of the video I'll catch up with you in the voiceover again, so I hope you'll enjoy watching. Oh, and for materials, by the way, I'm using a regular cartridge paper on A3 size, so very cheap cartridge paper, and then after the sketch is done I will transfer it to my pastel matte paper. And for the pencil I'm using a 4B by Stabilo, so a Stabilo graphite pencil, and then a kneaded eraser by Faber Castell. And now let's get on with the tutorial. I'm going to start off here in the top right corner. The horse doesn't have to be exactly in the center of the paper. We're going to be transferring this drawing onto another piece of paper anyway. So don't worry too much about the placement of the horse on the paper here. So we have the eye there. And just follow the shapes. So we have the nose here, which is actually pretty small. Not putting in all the details yet, just the basic shapes. So the snout is pretty round there. I am leaving out the halter. I don't think the halter adds anything to the drawing here, so I'm deciding to leave it out. And we have that chin there. And that round jawbone. So I always have a tendency to make my horse heads too long. So I'm really not trying to do that here. So I'm just following the lines. And then I start comparing. So here we have the start of that jawbone, and that is basically on the same line as this eye bump right here. And then the end of this jawbone is exactly where the ear starts. Just connect it there. I use very light pressure, so I will be able to erase the wrong lines. Here we have that nostril. So we're going to do a full body drawing, which means that the head is actually pretty small. Right, so I'm not going to be putting all the details in yet. First I want to move on. Let's make sure this jawbone has the right shape. So to put in the ears now, that's a bit of a tricky part because the mane are covering the base of the ear. This ear is pointing backwards. So Arabian horse ears are pretty pointy. Bit lower. So here we've got a pretty sharp point on the ear. And then the eye, so if you're drawing a line from the ear, from the bottom of the ear towards the nose, the eye is going to be about there. Mapping that out really quickly. Make sure the eye is on the same line as the other eye as well. Actually, this jawbone needs to be a bit lower. So I see that now by comparing the distance between the eye and the jawbone. It's a bit bigger on the reference photo, so I'm adjusting that. So when drawing Arabian horses, always make sure to put in that dimple in the bridge of the nose. So right, we have the basics there. Let's move on to the rest of the body now. So now for the neck. The neck is really muscular, quite long as well. So it just continues. Let's draw the forehead right there. So this part is covered by mane. So you can see it curved down. Just use long strokes for that. Very light pressure, you can always adjust the shape. And then right here, the front of the neck starts about in the middle of this jawbone. And that curves downwards, not completely vertical, but slightly angled. And that curves into the breast, which starts just below the muzzle here. I feel like this neck could be a bit thicker, like that. And when sketching I use a lot of small strokes, so I'm not drawing one straight line, but I'm using small strokes. This way I have more control over my hand. So we have this breast right here, the shoulder. Some muscles right there. And then let's move on, drawing a bit of the breast here. So I really like to sketch this way. So not using any basic shapes or circles, but just following the lines as I see them on my reference photo. And that is how I've always learned. But it is very important though to study the anatomy of the animal you're sketching. You have to understand it before you're able to draw it well. Right, so now before doing the legs, I always try to finish the body first. So the back and the abdomen and the butt, and then I can add my legs. Alright, so to move on to the back, that's pretty horizontal, pretty straight. It has a bit of a curve to it. And just draw that in. Also look at the length of the back compared to the length of the neck. So the neck is pretty long on this horse. You can see the distance between the withers and the ears are pretty much the same as the length of the back, so make sure to keep an eye on that when drawing the back. A lot of people draw the backs too long. Some light strokes there. Then about there. So just below the withers we have the tip of the hip bone. So that's a little bump. So that's this area right there, that's the hip bone. Then the bottom curves down. Curves down slightly. And then for the bottom I do like to draw a little circle or a little oval. We have another bone sticking out there. That's a bone attached to the pelvic bone. So that's another bump. Then I do like to draw a little oval there, which ends here with the tip of the hip bone. So from there we can then start defining the bottom, his hind leg, So I do like to be very quick with this. I don't like to just keep on working on one particular area. I just try to be quick, trust my eye, and then correct any details later. So I hope you can see. Now you can see. Then we have a little piece of skin that is attaching the knee to the abdomen. Little piece of skin right there. And then we have the belly. Very streamlined. It's going downwards a bit. Which I then attach to the breast. So that's what I always do. I just attach it like that, and then I can place my front leg based on this shape right here. So let's see if we have everything correct now. So now I'm comparing. So I'm just comparing all these different areas to each other, see if there's anything out of proportion. So I always try to keep this rule of the head that has to fit in to the shoulder. So it's almost never bigger than the shoulder area here. So especially with Arabians, which have pretty small heads. So I'm just comparing that. So it easily fits into the shoulder here. So let's do that to my drawing. Yep, about the same, so that's good. Let's move on to the hind leg now. A lot of people go wrong with the hind legs. So let's draw that in. Let's make sure that the patella is in the right place. Okay, so the patella has to be a bit lower. About there. Let's see if I can put it on screen somewhere. Right there. Can you see it? So we have this curve, and then the hock. So the tip of the hock, which is sticking out quite a bit. Very muscular leg. So we have the tibia and fibula here. On humans, those are two different bones. But on horses, they are kind of melted together. We have this joint right there, the hock joint. So try to not make this area too long. And then it's going backwards. Let's just draw a straight line for now, and then we can adjust that line, put some more shape to it. Actually has a bit of curve to it as well. Right, so we have one joint here, one there, and then one last joint right there. And then the hoof is going backwards like that. Okay, so let's leave it like this for now and move on to the front leg. So I add the hoofs when I know for sure that all the legs are in the right proportion. But we have the base of the hind leg right now. Okay, so for the front leg, I'm starting off drawing a line right here. So this is still the scapula, all shoulder blade right here. And then we have the elbow, which starts around there. Muscle right there. And then we have the front leg coming out. So this is a joint, we have the elbow. Don't make the front leg, or especially the upper arm, too thin. They are quite muscular. So this is coming forward, quite horizontally as well. And the top has a bit of a curve to it. Really keep an eye on the distance, the length of the upper arm. Then the knee starts around there. So I try to compare the placement of the knee to the head. So the knee is not just a ball, it has some shape to it, so we have a little bump here. I'm not sure what all these muscles are called. In school I actually had to learn all the Latin names of the bones of human and animal anatomy, but I never actually had to learn all the muscle names. Okay, and then we have the metatarsals coming out from the knee, also in a slight curve. Don't make this too thin. And the knee is about in the center of the leg, maybe slightly more towards the bottom. And then we have another joint right there. And then to compare this joint here to the placement of the muscle, so that is right below the chin, right below the muscle. Let's see how that compares to my drawing. Alright, so my leg is coming forward a bit more. Let's adjust that a bit. Not going to draw in the hoof completely yet. I don't want to put it in without having compared this leg to the hind leg. So I'm going to do that first. So, right. Okay, so when comparing this, I see that the leg is a bit too much forward. So I can still decide if I want to adjust that. For now I'm leaving it like this. It doesn't look weird. So now to draw in the hoof, let's see what it looks like. So draw the shape of the hoof exactly how you see it. So people often have an idea in their heads of what a hoof should look like. That is usually not exactly how it is in reality. So let's leave it like this for now. And then let's do the other hind leg. So I find the other leg always a bit easier because you have something to compare it to. It starts about here, where that piece of skin starts. Then we have quite a big curve. Then the hock. And then it comes down like that. So I'm exactly following the shapes, how I see them. Here we have the other patella. So we have one patella right there and then the other here. Then that hook is quite a big joint as well. And then the bottom of the leg, the bottom part, is a bit thinner. So I'm very lightly sketching in those shapes. And this is actually such an important part of learning how to draw. So, of course, tracing is no problem if you want to focus on just learning how to shade. But actually, if you are able to draw correct proportions freehand of a certain object or animal, it makes the learning how to shade such easier. Just going over those lines until I'm happy with how it looks. We have the other joint. So this hoof is disappearing into the grass, so I'm not drawing that. So here we have the other joint and then the hoof coming downwards like that. So now let's see the placement of this leg compared to that leg. I think I drew this one a bit too big, a bit too thick as well. I think I'm going to thin down and shorten this leg a bit, so the joint ends a bit earlier there, and then the hoof is right there. I think that looks a bit better. I'm actually going to make this leg a bit longer, because this hoof has to hit the ground, and this one is just above the ground, so it needs to come down a bit more. Alright, so I think that looks quite alright. Let's do the final front leg now. It starts just below the elbow, right there. Have a good look at the shape of this arm. Has a bit of curve to it. And then let's have a look at the placement of the knee, which is next to the hoof, so I have to make sure I draw that in correctly. Maybe I should shorten this hoof a bit. So here we have that knee. So it's always a challenge to make all legs equally long. So although they are all in different positions, they do have to have the same proportions. Okay, so we have that knee there. We have this little bump here of the knee. And then to have a look at the placement of the hoof and the placement of this leg. So this leg has to end up a bit higher than this one. And it ends just below the withers. So you can see the withers and the hoof are on one line. And now to have a look at the proportion of this leg, let's compare that. So we have the upper arm here, and the bottom half here. So this upper arm has to be a little bit longer than this bone. You can see on the reference that's the case too. So my bottom arm might be a little bit too long. Yeah, it's a little bit too long. Going to shorten that. So it's all about comparing. Let's do a bit of erasing. As you can see on cartridge paper, you can make smudges so easily. It's not ideal to draw on, but it's okay to do your initial sketch on. Let's erase this a bit. Now you can see that probably the distance between the front leg and the hind leg is a little bit too big, but that's not weird or out of proportion. I just made the stride of my horse a bit longer than as it is on the reference. But things like this are not so out of proportion that you'd have to correct it. And welcome back to the voiceover. This is basically the end of this tutorial. So after I sketched the body, I adjusted some of the lines and cleaned them up a bit with the kneaded eraser, and then I sketch in the tail and the mane, and I just do that by loosely sketching in the direction of the hair. So It's not a really solid outline, but just a few quick lines for myself so I know in which direction the hairs are going. And then after that the sketch was finished, and then I would transfer it over to my pastel mat by covering the whole back side of the paper with graphite. So I don't have transfer paper at home, so I just cover the paper with graphite, then place it on top of my pastel mat and trace over the outlines with my graphite pencil. And then you get a very nice clean outline on your pastel mat without having to actually sketch on the pastel mat itself. And that basically was my technique for this sketch, for this drawing. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you learned something from it. If you enjoyed it, please share it around. It would really help me. If you're interested in seeing the pastel piece, so the real-time narrated tutorial of doing the coloring, that will be up on my Patreon this month. And yeah, thank you so much for your support on here and on there. I really appreciate it. And if you have any questions, please leave them below. And then I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.